Hi, I'm Kenny Colbert with the Employers Association. Thanks for joining me for coffee today. I want to spend a few minutes talking about FMLA and ADA and how they correlate with each other. And I also want to talk about a potential issue that may arise if you have an employee who's covered by both FMLA and ADA. As you well know, an eligible employee can take up to 12 weeks of leave under FMLA if they have a serious health condition. Under ADA, the law says that you may have to provide an accommodation for an employee who's disabled. Now, there are various forms of accommodations, but some of the most common are a reduced work schedule or maybe a leave of absence. But here's a key point. The ADA says that you cannot use the leave time that is granted under another law toward the accommodation process. So in essence, you have to give something that is over and above as an accommodation as to what is offered under FMLA. You can't use the 12 weeks of FMLA toward the accommodation process. Let me give you a couple of examples. Let's say you have an employee who's had some minor surgery. The employee's been out of work for, say, 6 weeks. That would be FMLA. Let's say the employee comes back to work and then he has an off-the-job accident and he breaks his leg and the doctor says he needs to be out of work for about 8 weeks. So you would put the employee back on FMLA for 6 weeks. He's already used 6 weeks. So that means his 12 weeks of FMLA have been exhausted and that law is over with. You don't have to worry with it. Now this employee needs 2 more weeks of leave. So are you going to grant that leave? So you would look at your company policies to see if it offers any type of additional leave above FMLA. You look to see if you have any prior practices where you've given people additional leave. You'd also look toward the ADA to see if the person is disabled and if you would need to make an accommodation. Now, a broken leg with somebody needing to be out 8 weeks, generally speaking, is not going to be an ADA issue, so you don't have to worry about that. So, it would be your decision as a company as to whether you grant the additional 2 weeks of leave. Maybe you have a policy that covers it, maybe not. There's no legal basis for what you do after that because FMLA is not an issue, ADA is not an issue. The employee relations move would be to offer the additional leave time, but there's no legal basis for that. But let's throw a twist on this. Let's say you have an employee who misses 6 weeks of work for minor surgery. Again, that's going to be FMLA. The employee comes back to work for a few weeks. Then the employee is diagnosed with cancer and the doctor says they may have to be out for an extended period of time. So you would put the employee on FMLA, they would use their remaining 6 weeks of FMLA, thus the 12 weeks have been used and FMLA is out of the picture. But cancer is certainly going to be a protected disability under the ADA. At that point, the doctor comes forward and says this employee probably needs to take off an additional 12 weeks for chemotherapy and radiation, etc. You're sitting there thinking to yourself, wow, I've already given this employee 12 weeks of FMLA, now I have to give them 12 weeks of ADA leave. Do I really want to do that? Well, that would be a reasonable accommodation for all intents and purposes under the ADA, and you probably should grant that. The key point to remember is you can't use the 12 weeks of FMLA when you're considering the accommodation for ADA. ADA has to be something over and above that. One more scenario that you need to think about. Let's say you have a new hire to the company. This person's been with you for maybe 45 days, 60 days, etc. Maybe you have a company policy that says you have to be here 3 months before you're eligible for a leave of absence. This person's been with you for 45 days and they're diagnosed with cancer and they need some extended time away from work. In that situation, you would probably have to grant the extended time away as an accommodation under ADA. In essence, your company policy does not match up with ADA, so you may need to change your policy to meet the intent of the law. And as you're well aware with ADA, it goes on to talk about reasonable accommodations, and it talks about undue hardship. So what is the definition of an undue hardship? That's a long and complicated definition. If you have additional questions about this, call us. But the point that I want to drive home is this: the accommodation process under ADA has to be something over and above as to what you would offer under FMLA. Again, call us if you have any questions. Thanks very much.